My name is Emily. The night my family finally voiced what they had been showing me for years, I stood in the front hallway with my back against the door. My brother was in my face, finger jabbed at my chest, yelling, "No one wants you here." Before I could fully process the sting of those words, I heard clapping. My mom applauding him, as if he had won an argument instead of pushing her own daughter toward the street. My dad stood silently to the side, eyes down, pretending not to notice. In that moment, something inside me shut off. I didn't scream, cry, or beg them to take it back. I simply looked at them, memorized the pride in their faces as they finally pushed out what they considered the family disappointment, and said, "Okay." Then I turned, walked upstairs, and started packing. Jeans, a few t-shirts, my work shoes from the coffee shop, the laptop I bought myself, and any cash I had hidden. Each zipper felt like another thread snapping between us. I could hear them downstairs talking about me, as if I were already gone. And for the first time, I realized maybe that was exactly what I needed. I left without slamming the door or saying goodbye. If that seems dramatic, wait until you hear what happened the next morning. 36 missed calls from the same people who had claimed nobody wanted me there. If you want to know how I went from unwanted to holding all the power, stay with me until the end. People always say family should be your safe place. For me, home always felt like a stage where I was just an extra in someone else's show. I grew up in a typical suburban house outside Chicago, with trimmed lawns, decorated mailboxes, and neighbors who waved as if everything behind closed doors was equally perfect. Inside, though, there was a clear, unspoken rule. My brother mattered more. His name is Jake, and he's the golden child in every story my parents tell. My mom, Karen, talks about him as if she directed the movie of his life. My dad, Mark, doesn't say much, but when he does, it's usually to back her up. They claim to treat us equally, but the truth has never been close. I'm 19, work at a coffee shop near campus, and put every paycheck toward my graphic design classes. I pick up extra shifts, walk home smelling like espresso and sugar, and still find the energy to cook or clean because my mom says she's too tired after work and Jake needs time to focus. Focus on what? I've never known. He's 22, dropped out of community college after one semester, and spends most of his time yelling into a headset at strangers online. In my mom's mind, that still counts as potential. When he wanted a new gaming console and curved monitor, they bought it. When I asked for help paying for software I needed for school, they laughed and told me to be independent. At dinner, every conversation circles back to him, his games, his online friends, his stress. If I mention a good grade or a design I'm proud of, someone glances at their phone and changes the subject. Eventually, I stopped trying to participate and began clearing plates, refilling water, stacking dishes, like an unpaid housekeeper who happened to live there. It wasn't always explosive. It was 1,000 small choices, 1,000 tiny cuts. Mom calling Jake my baby while reminding me I should handle my own responsibilities. Dad telling me I'm strong, then stepping in whenever Jake messed up. The first time Jake borrowed money from my drawer for game skins, my parents called it a misunderstanding, promising he'd pay me back. He never did. I quickly learned I was expected to be forgiving, quiet, and understanding, while he could be reckless, loud, and defended. I told myself if I worked hard enough, I could buy my way out. Once I finished classes and got a real job, I wouldn't have to be home much. That thought got me through long shifts and late nights cleaning coffee machines. The night my brother shoved me toward the door and my mom applauded wasn't a random outburst. It was the moment all those small injustices piled high enough to crush any hope that things might change. A few hours earlier, our kitchen would have looked normal to anyone, a typical family evening with no hint of what was about to happen. I came home tired from the coffee shop, holding my tips and thinking about a project I needed to finish for class. I had no idea that walking through that door would be the last time I entered as someone who actually lived there. My feet ached, my brain felt fried, and all I wanted was to get upstairs and finish my design for a small scholarship competition. As I entered, the first thing I noticed wasn't the TV or my parents. It was Jake's voice, loud, echoing down the hall. He was sprawled on the couch, headset on, yelling into his mic, fingers flying over my laptop. For a moment, I froze. "What are you doing?" I asked calmly. He barely glanced at me. "Relax, I'm just using it for a bit," he said, turning back to his game. My project folder was still on the desktop, but when I checked, one main file was corrupted. My heart sank. "Jake, what did you do?" I asked. I tried to close his game, but he shoved my hand away. "Can you not? You're messing up my match," he snapped. I stared at him. "You're playing on my laptop without asking, and just ruined my project. I have a deadline tomorrow." He rolled his eyes, dismissive. "It's just some drawing. Redo it. Don't be dramatic." My hands shook. Those drawings were hours of work after every shift. Pixels and lines I was proud of. "You already took money from me. Now my work too," I said. "You don't get to help yourself to my things because Mom thinks you're fragile." His expression changed immediately. He ripped off one side of his headset, glared at me, and yelled, "Oh my God, are you still on that? You lent me cash. Get over it. You always act like a martyr." "You stole it," I shot back. "You never paid me back. That's not lending." Jake stood up so quickly the laptop slid across the coffee table. He stepped into my space, chest puffed, voice rising. Through his headset, I could hear someone laughing, asking what was happening. "You're just jealous because Mom and Dad actually appreciate me," he sneered. "You think working at some coffee shop and drawing makes you better than me?" "I think working at all makes me more responsible than you," I replied. "All you do is shout at a screen and dig the family deeper into debt." The front door opened again. Mom and Dad walked in, arms full of groceries, mid-conversation. They saw us facing off, and instinctively, Mom rushed to Jake's side as if he were the one under attack. "What is going on here?" she demanded, looking at me, not him. Jake didn't miss a beat. "She's freaking out over her little art files and trying to shut off my game," he said, jabbing a thumb at me. "I was just borrowing the laptop." "Borrowing?" I repeated. "You corrupted my project. I've been working on it for a scholarship. I told you not to touch my stuff. I bought that laptop with my own money. He has his own computer upstairs. Why is he even on mine?" Mom sighed, as if I were a toddler throwing a tantrum. "It's just a laptop, Emily. You two need to learn to share. Your brother has a tournament tonight. Can you not make everything about you for once?" Dad nodded, automatically siding with her. "If the file is gone, you can redo it. You're talented. You'll figure it out," he added, as if that were a comfort. I felt my throat tighten. "It's not just the file," I said quietly. "It's everything. The money, the time, the way he walks all over me, and you always make it seem like I'm the problem when I speak up." Jake gave a short, ugly laugh. "Because you are the problem," he snapped. "You're always whining, always playing victim." He stepped closer, breath on my face. "If you hate it here so much, why don't you just leave?" Mom didn't stop him. She folded her arms, watching me, waiting to see my reaction. Heat rushed to my face. "Maybe I should," I said. "Maybe you'd all be happier if I wasn't here." Jake smirked. "No, maybe about it," he said, and shoved me. It wasn't gentle. My back hit the front door, and the sound made me flinch. Then I heard it again. Slow, sharp claps from Mom, smiling at him as if he had done something brave. "Finally, someone said it," she remarked. Dad looked away, jaw tights, still not intervening. In that instant, something in me shut down. The fear, the anger, the hope they might realize their cruelty. Everything went quiet. I straightened my shirt, looked at each of them, and said softly, "Got it. Message received." Then I turned and walked upstairs to pack. They stayed downstairs, already talking about me like I was a problem that had been solved. I didn't slam the door. I left with my backpack, duffel, and a numbness heavier than any luggage. The cold outside stung, but it felt softer than Mom's smile at Jake while he pushed me. I loaded my stuff into my old car, sat behind the wheel, and looked back at the house. No one appeared. For the first time, I accepted something I'd feared admitting for years. They didn't want me there, and maybe I didn't need them as much as I thought. I drove toward the city, hands clenched around the wheel, headlights stretching away from everything I'd known. I texted my best friend Zoe, "Hey, can I crash at your place tonight?" Long story. She replied instantly, "Of course, just get here." At her small apartment, she opened the door in sweatpants, messy hair, and hugged me without saying, "I told you so." We ordered cheap pizza. She gave me an oversized t-shirt. I curled up on her couch with a blanket and my laptop on the coffee table. The corrupted file stared back at me, a reminder of everything I'd left behind. I didn't open it. I let it sit while Zoe put on a random show, pretending not to notice my glassy eyes. "You can stay as long as you want," she said quietly. I nodded, knowing my voice would crack if I spoke. That night, I fell asleep to the hum of traffic and distant sirens, instead of Jake yelling through thin walls. The silence wasn't punishment. It felt like possibility. The next morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. At first, I thought it was a glitch. The screen lit up and went dark repeatedly, vibrating almost off the table. When I finally grabbed it, I stared. 36 missed calls from Mom, Dad, and Jake. Messages stacked on top of each other. The first were predictable. "Emily, stop being dramatic. Come home. You're scaring your mother." Jake said, "Nice job making everything about you again." I almost laughed. They had thrown me out, yet leaving made me the problem. I brushed my teeth, splashed my face, and tried to ignore it. When I returned, the message's tone had shifted. "Emily, please pick up. This is serious. We need to talk. Your brother, money, legal trouble. We could lose everything. We need your help." My heart didn't drop. It paused. Less than 12 hours earlier, they had watched Jake shove me and told me I wasn't wanted. Now, suddenly, I was useful. I sat back on the couch, phone in hand, Zoe watching from the kitchen. "Let me guess," she said. I laughed humorlessly. "Yeah, my brother's in trouble, and I'm the emergency contact." I didn't call back immediately. I stared at the 36 missed calls and messages, switching from angry to desperate, wondering what you do when the people who discarded you suddenly act like you're the only solution. Eventually, curiosity and responsibility won. I hit call. Mom answered immediately, voice shaking. "Emily, oh thank God," she said. "No, are you okay?" "Just, we're in trouble. You need to come home." I didn't say anything about whether this was still home. I asked what happened. She gave only scattered words. "Your brother, money, online loans, bank freezing accounts, papers from the bank. Just come, please." She hung up before I could respond. I stared at the screen, then grabbed my keys. Zoe, arms crossed, said quietly, "You don't owe them anything." I knew she was right. I went anyway. The drive back felt different, less like returning home, and more like walking into a meeting I never agreed to attend. The house looked the same from the outside, but a stack of envelopes sat on the porch table where there hadn't been any the night before. As I stepped closer, I could read the bold black text through the plastic windows. "Notice delinquent. Final warning." My mom opened the door before I could knock. Her eyes were red, her hair pulled back in a way that made her look smaller than I'd ever seen. For a brief moment, I thought she might hug me, apologize, or acknowledge what happened. Instead, she stepped aside and said, "We need to talk in the kitchen." My dad sat at the table with papers spread everywhere. Jake was slouched in a chair, arms crossed, eyes locked on his phone, as if this was only a mild inconvenience. Credit card statements, printed emails, and one envelope with the word foreclosure in large, unavoidable letters covered the table. My stomach tightened. "So," I said evenly, "what is all this?" My dad cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses the way he always does when he's uncomfortable. "Your brother made some poor decisions," he said. "We tried to manage it, but it got out of control." My mom cut in before he could soften it further. Jake had taken out several online loans for equipment, some in his name and some in theirs. It was meant to be temporary. He believed he could pay it back once his streaming took off. "His streaming?" I repeated. "You mean the games he yells at all night with 3 viewers?" Jake glared, but didn't argue. My dad sighed. The interest rates were higher than expected. They tried consolidating, shifting debt onto the house, but now the credit cards were maxed, the loans were in default, and the bank was threatening foreclosure unless they made a lump sum payment. "How much?" I asked. My mom swallowed. $15,000, she said, "to stop legal action and get back on a payment plan." The number settled heavily in the room. It was more money than I'd ever held at once, but close enough to my savings that I immediately understood why my phone had exploded that morning. "And you called me," I said slowly, "because you want me to fix it." My mom reached across the table, palms open. She reminded me I had savings, that I'd been working nonstop, that I'd said I was doing well. If I paid this off, they could keep the house. They would pay me back. I laughed, a short, sharp sound. "You'd pay me back? Like Jake paid me back when he took my money for his games? Like you protected me when he shoved me into a door and you clapped?" My mom flinched and said, We were all upset that things were said, but this was bigger than that. This was our home. Didn't I care if they lost it? I looked around the kitchen. The same table where I'd done homework while Jake bragged. The same counters I'd cleaned countless times. The same floor where they made it clear I was disposable. I care, I said, but not enough to destroy myself to save you. My dad's expression hardened. He called that dramatic and said families support each other. I met his eyes and asked if that rule applied the night before, when their son shoved their daughter and his wife applauded. Jake finally snapped, saying I was still crying about it, that I was being ridiculous, that he didn't push me that hard, and now I was willing to let them lose the house over my feelings. I turned to him calmly. No, you're going to lose the house because of your choices, your loans, your lies, and your parents' decision to protect you. My mom's voice went sharp. She said they were trying to fix it and wanted me to be part of the solution, not the problem. This is what family does, she insisted. We stick together. Something settled inside me then. For years, I had kept quiet to maintain peace. I was done. You only call it family when you need something, I said. The rest of the time, I'm the maid and the emotional buffer. I'm not draining my savings. I'm not taking a loan. I'm not signing anything. My mom stared at me as if she didn't recognize me. She whispered that if they lost the house, it would be my fault. I stood. No, I said. If you lose it, it's because you chose to clap when your son pushed me out instead of stopping him. Jake muttered that I was selfish. My dad looked ready to argue but had nothing prepared. I picked up my bag and keys. I told them I came because they said it was serious. I listened. I understood. And my answer was still no. As I reached the door, my mom said quietly that if I walked out, they wouldn't forgive me. I looked back. You already made it clear you don't want me here, I said. This time, I'm choosing to believe you. I left them sitting in that kitchen with their unpaid bills and empty explanations, facing what would hurt more, losing the house or losing the one person who always cleaned up their mess. I wish that had been the end, but people like my family don't release control easily. As soon as I got back to Zoe's, my phone lit up again. First came the anger. Long messages from my dad about betrayal, from my mom about choosing money over family, from Jake saying I was pathetic and would regret this. I muted the thread and tried focusing on my work schedule, but it's hard to ignore your own mother repeatedly calling you a disappointment. Then the tone shifted. The next day, my mom said they didn't mean what they said, that they were scared and loved me. My dad wrote about tension and coming together. Jake didn't apologize, but said if I helped this once, he'd stay out of my way forever. That actually made me laugh. For a while, I ignored them. I worked, ate cheap noodles with Zoe, and acted like my life was finally mine. But the messages kept coming, and a new thought surfaced. If they truly wanted my help, what would it look like to make them admit what they'd done? Not just to me, but to everyone they'd convinced they were a perfect family? So when my mom texted late one night asking what they could do to make it right, I didn't shut her down. I replied, "If you want my help, you're going to admit what you did publicly." She responded immediately, asking what I meant. I took a breath and typed it out. She would post on Facebook from her account where friends and relatives could see it. She would admit she favored Jake for years, allowed him to use my money and belongings, and stood by while he shoved me out of the house and said no one wanted me there. She would apologize to me by name, publicly, not privately, not in a text. The typing bubble blinked on and off for a long time. When her reply finally came, it was just 3 words. That's not fair. I shrugged, even though she couldn't see me. Neither is asking your daughter to erase $15,000 of your mistakes, I replied. Then I put my phone face down and went to bed. The next afternoon, Zoe walked into the living room holding her phone. You've seen this?" she asked. I hadn't. She handed it to me. It was my mom's Facebook page. Front and center was a long post already stacked with comments. She had done it. She hadn't followed my words exactly, softening some points and framing parts as misunderstandings. But it was all there. The favoritism, the stolen money, the night Jake pushed me and she clapped. The sentence, "I was wrong and I hurt my daughter Emily," sat in the middle like a spotlight. People were shocked. Some commented, "I had no idea," or "that must have been so painful for her." A few defended my parents, but others didn't let it slide. Family members tagged me, asked if I was okay. Cousins I rarely spoke to messaged me, saying they believed me and were sorry. My mom sent a screenshot of her post as proof. "We did what you asked. Now will you help us keep the house?" I stared at the message. I thought about the little girl I used to be, the one who would have done anything to be chosen. I remembered the hollow feeling when she clapped as her son shoved me. Then I thought about the me who had slept on a friend's couch and felt more at peace than in that big suburban house. "I believe you're sorry," I typed. "I accept your apology, but I'm still not giving you my savings. I'm not going to fix this for you." There was a long pause. Then my dad's number appeared calling. I let it ring. Another text followed. "You're being cruel." I replied simply, "Facing consequences isn't cruelty." After that, things moved faster than I expected. The bank didn't care about Facebook posts or family drama. Notices became final notices, and my parents got a move-out date. They tried selling what they could, furniture, electronics, the gaming setup they had gone into debt for, but it wasn't enough. Jake lost his part-time job when a background check revealed his credit issues and associated lawsuits. Neighbors noticed the foreclosure sign and the moving truck. My mom's posts shifted from boasting about her amazing son to vague quotes about betrayal by loved ones. But those who had seen her confession didn't forget. Some unfriended her, others stopped responding. The perfect image she'd curated for years cracked, and this time, no one could repair it. I watched from a distance, through screenshots and secondhand updates, feeling a mix of satisfaction and sadness. I hadn't actively ruined their lives. I had simply stopped cleaning up their mess, and that alone was enough to let everything built on lies and favoritism collapse. If you were in my shoes, would you have stepped in at the last minute to save them? Or would you have let them feel the consequences of their choices the way I did? 6 months later, I sometimes think about that hallway. It feels like a scene from someone else's life. My mom clapping while Jake shoved me used to replay in my head on a loop. Now, most nights, I fall asleep in my own small apartment with my thrifted furniture, mismatched mugs, and laptop on a desk only I touch. I still work at the coffee shop, but part-time, leaving space for freelance design work and an internship at a marketing agency downtown. The scholarship I'd been applying for? I redid the project from scratch at Zoe's, won a smaller grant, and proved to myself I didn't need anyone's permission to move forward. My parents and I talk sometimes, but not like before. Mom sends long texts about their struggles in the new apartment, missing the old house, wishing we could go back. Dad has sent a few awkward half-apology messages. Jake hasn't really apologized, just a brief text months ago. "I shouldn't have pushed you, but you didn't have to let them take the house." I didn't respond to the second part. I'm not waiting for a Hollywood reunion. I don't need them to fully understand. I just need them to know I won't stand in the line of fire anymore. The anger I carried for years has mostly burned out. What remains is quiet clarity and a stubborn kind of peace. I don't feel guilty for not saving them. They had years of chances to treat me as a daughter, not a backup plan. They chose otherwise, and life eventually responded. The lesson here is simple. Blood doesn't give anyone the right to break you, then demand you fix what they shattered. Sometimes, the bravest, kindest thing you can do is walk away from people who consistently show they don't value you, even if they share your last name. Yes, my mom once clapped while my brother shoved me. Now, I sleep peacefully at night, building a life they no longer control. If you were me, would you forgive them and let them back in? Or would you, like me, choose to protect your own self-respect over family peace? Have you ever had to make that choice?